Okay. So, getting back into our coverage over Kurt Busiek and also George Perez run on the Avengers, we're going to pick up with issues number 10 and issues number 11. Now, this is another two-part storyline where it's really more kind of continuing the different plot lines that have been going on in Avenger comics when it came to Kurt Busiek's run on the Avengers. Like, for example, the idea of the Scarlet Witch and also Wonder Man, because that character right there has been playing around in the background for a few issues, few videos that we have done on the channel so far of this series. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into Avengers issue number 10, where basically this issue is really celebrating the idea of the Avengers. And what I mean by that statement is that it's Avengers Day. And apparently ever since the Avengers had came together, every year you would have the Avengers be celebrated in the city of New York. And you have the people being happy for what the Avengers have done for them over the years. And I kind of like this a lot because for Stan Lee and also Jack Kirby being the creators of the Avengers, it's kind of cool to see these great writers and artists pay, their homage over to the original creators of the Avengers. But also for Avengers Day, I kind of want to go do a callback to our other videos we did for the X-Men. And let me explain, because for the X-Men videos, we have been covering almost everything X-Men in the 1990s, right? And late 1990s, you had an event called the Onslaught event. And with that event alone, you had the Avengers and the Fantastic Four get pushed into the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to dive into that right there, but when the heroes were gone in that reality right there and only leave behind like the X-Men or Spider-Man or Daredevil, you really had the public be very upset about the idea of the Avengers being gone. And so with the Avengers now being back in the main Marvel universe, you have the city of New York, really, you have the public of the nation or the world possibly being happy about the idea of the Avengers being back so that there is a superhero team out there that could possibly protect them. And also, you have this issue kind of mentioned that, like, listen, over the years, you had many different people on the Avengers, from the X-Men, Fantastic Four, or Namor, Black Panther. The list goes on and on. And the reason why I'm bringing that up, because you have the X-Men also watching the Avengers. And unfortunately for the Avengers, for the X-Men, they don't get really celebrated like the Avengers do. Now, as we all know, because the X-Men are a team full of mutants, and that's kind of why you don't have the city being happy about the idea of the mutant race or the X-Men. Now, there was a time where you had the city of New York love X-Factor with Cyclops, Angel, Jean Grey, Iceman, and Beast, but that was in the late 1980s going into the 1990s for Marvel Comics. But it's also the Avengers saying like, hey, listen, we have so many people out there who are on the team. Like, let's not forget, Beast was also part of the Avengers as well a long time ago. Now, like I said earlier, this is also kind of pushing forward the idea of the Scarlet Witch as well. Let me explain, because for the Scarlet Witch, ever since the first story arc of this run, there has been a lot of things going on with her character. Let me explain, because in the first story arc, you had Morgan Le Fay kidnap Scarlet Witch to kind of use her as this bridge between her own magic and Asgard magic so that she would then be able to warp reality. Now, when it came to the Avengers and also the Scarlet Witch, they were able to stop Morgan Le Fay. The problem was that when it came to the Scarlet Witch, she also brought back Wonder Man to life. And that was pretty huge because for Wonder Man, he died a long time ago in a storyline in Force Wars. And so it's the idea that apparently he was never truly dead, but somehow the Scarlet Witch magic is able to bring him back to life. And so for the Scarlet Witch, she wants some answers on why he's able to come back with her magic, but only for short periods of time. And so you have Wanda pay a visit to her old mentor, and that would be Agatha Harkness. And when it comes to Agnetha, she tells us two things of why the Scarlet Witch is able to bring Wonder Man back to life. The first thing is the idea that she is connected to a character known as Chthon. Now, for Chthon, he was this powerful elder god that got locked away. Now, here's the thing, because when the Scarlet Witch was born on Wundagore Mountain, there was this light, and that light was basically him beginning the process of turning the Scarlet Witch into his vessel so that one day he could technically use her to escape his prison. Now, with all that being said, when it comes to her magic, it's his magic that she's currently using at the moment. Now, of course, over time, Marvel Comics, a few things have changed, but by this point in this issue, that is what's going on right now with the Scarlet Witch. Now, with all that being said, it's also us finding out that when it came to Morgan Le Fay, when she had used the magic or played with the magic of the Scarlet Witch, it evolved her magic. And so, thanks to Morgan Le Fay, for the Scarlet Witch, her magic right now has evolved to a new height, a new level. And the problem is, for the Scarlet Witch, she has not really been able to master this new level of magic just yet. But it does explain why she's now able to bring Wonder Man back to life. But here comes the big question though. Why doesn't Wonder Man stay around? Because the problem is he will appear and then disappear just like that. The question is now, how can we make it permanent? But this kind of leads into the ending of the first chapter of this storyline, because while you do have the Scarlet Witch kind of learning what's going on with her powers, back over to the Avengers, you have the Avengers at the moment right now just still celebrating Avengers Day. But they have gotten to that point where they're also celebrating the idea of the fallen heroes. And that right there is a major problem, because out of nowhere, you didn't have our heroes be confronted by the Grim Reaper. Now, currently for the Grim Reaper, he's locked away in a different dimension. But with him now in that other dimension, he's still able to bring back the fallen heroes of the Avengers and use them against, well, our heroes. So like, for example, Captain Marvel, Dr. Druid, Hellcat, Mockingbird, Swordsman, Thunderstrike. These are characters who had died over time being on the Avengers, and they now have been brought back to life. But there is one more, and that would be Wonder Man. Now, for Wonder Man, he's kind of the key reason why you have the Grim Reaper, his brother, being able to pull off this plan, but from another dimension at the moment. But either way, you do have these zombie versions of the Avengers begin to fight against our heroes who are currently alive at the moment. And for our heroes who are alive at the moment, they're losing the battle very easily. As a matter of fact, they do get defeated. But right when they do lose their battle, you didn't have Agnetha Harkness tell the Scarlet Witch how she's able to bring Wonder Man back to life permanently. She has to love him back. The reason why he was able to hold on and not be officially dead completely, because his love for the Scarlet Witch made him held on to make sure he never did fully die off. But the way to bring him back completely is for her to love him back. And so, as we enter the final chapter of the storyline, we do pick up with Wanda arriving back to the city. Now, for Wanda, she had missed the entire idea of Avengers Day, so she has no idea what exactly happened to the Avengers, but also what happened to like the actual celebration. And so, when she does arrive to the mansion, well, she's then confronted by not all of them, but some of the dead Avengers who are currently on the side of the Grim Reaper. But she also sees Wonder Man sitting right there in the middle of the room as well. Now, when it comes to Kurt Busiek and also George Perez, it kind of gives us a quick rundown on the idea of both the Grim Reaper and Wonder Man being brothers. Now, when it came to them in the early days of Marvel Comics, for the Grim Reaper and also Wonder Man, they were basically abused by their father, right? Now, when it came to Wonder Man, he did try his best to be there for his brother. The problem was, for the Grim Reaper, he began to kind of work for other criminals like the Magia. So for Simon, he was still around for Eric, but not completely. Now, as most folks know, when it came to Wonder Man, originally he was a bad guy for the Avengers, but then over time he went to the good side and then joined the Avengers. And so for Eric, that kind of bothered him as well, the Grim Reaper, because the reason why he saw his brother be a criminal for a short period of time, but while being a criminal, he gained powers and then became a superhero. While for the Grim Reaper, he still looked as a villain. Now, with this force field being around the park where the rest of the Avengers are currently at, you do have the other heroes of the Marvel Universe trying their best to get inside the actual force field. So, the Fantastic Four, you got Spider-Man. There's also a point where you have Stunt Master as well trying to break into the actual force field. But of course, for our heroes, they're not really able to breach the force field. But while you have them doing that, now, I kind of want to shift over to the Scarlet Witch because with her being a prisoner away from the rest of the Avengers, but being watched over by the dead Avengers, you had a Scarlet Witch realize something here. That the way the dead Avengers are talking, the way they are moving, the way they're kind of explaining things to the Scarlet Witch, they're not acting like themselves. And matter of fact, she realized that the way they are talking and acting is because of the Grim Reaper. Like his emotions of the idea of him and also his brother and what they had went through over time is kind of feeding through the different members of the Dead Avengers at the moment. And so for the Scarlet Witch, she's kind of like, you guys are not acting like yourselves at all. And so you have her begin to use her magic. Now, this is kind of the book showing us like, yes, this is the Scarlet Witch beginning to evolve, becoming more and more powerful. And technically, we could say that all this happening right here, plus a few other things as well prior to this point here, will lead into the whole idea of House of M. But either way, for the Scarlet Witch, she's then able to use her magic to fix the minds of the different members of the dead Avengers. And you have the dead Avengers go over to the park. Now, when they do, the dead Avengers are technically able to breach the force field that was around the park. And so when they do get inside the actual force field, they do free the Avengers who are currently alive. Now, for the Grim Reaper, he does bring in this army of demons, but you do have the dead Avengers and the living Avengers work together to fight against this army. Now, for a brief moment, I thought, oh my God, we might see some of the dead Avengers come back to life. No, only one of the dead Avengers will come back to life. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but it will be Wonder Man be coming back to life here at the very end of this storyline. Because for the Scarlet Witch, she's then confronted by Agnetha Harkness. Now, for Agnetha, the reason why she's here at the moment is the idea of her telling the Scarlet Witch, like, hey, listen, if you want to save the day, if you want to make sure the Grim Reaper loses, what you have to do is bring Simon through completely. Because what she is saying is that Simon is the key. He is the anchor because he's right now in between life and death. And the thing is, your magic has the ability to bring him back into the world of the living. But when you do that, you're going to break that bond, that anchor, where of course the other dead members of the Avengers will go back into the world of the dead. But also you'll then be able to stop the Grim Reaper from killing off the Avengers. And so once you had a Scarlet Witch begin to tap into her new level of magic, you then had all the different dead members of the Avengers just disappear. Now, each dead member of the Avengers, they wanted the Avengers to hear one last message to pass on to their loved ones. Like, for example, Mockingbird. She had a message for Hawkeye, her husband, but she disappears before she's able to give that message to the Avengers. And honestly, it's kind of sad because Hawkeye does reappear on the Avengers book in the next storyline I'm going to cover here in a moment. Like, maybe next week or two. But anyways, though, it's the idea that each of them has something to say, but unfortunately, they disappear. Now, once you do have the Scarlet Witch being able to bring Simon through into the world of the living completely, you then have Simon being able to officially defeat the Grim Reaper. Now, this kind of leads into the idea of us finding out that the Grim Reaper was also brought back into this reality, but sent over to an asylum. And the reason why, because for the Grim Reaper, he had this link with his brother, Wonder Man. The idea that every single time he did something bad, there was Wonder Man doing something good to make up for his bad. But the problem was, there has been times where Wonder Man had officially died. And so without that link to his brother, it kind of drove him a tad bit mad. And for the Grim Reaper, he began to look at things differently when it came to their past, but also their present day selves. But either way, with him now being brought back into this reality, it's the Avengers saying like, hey, don't worry, he'll get some help now at the asylum. Now, this also all leads into the idea of Vision right now being jealous because he wanted to get back with the Scarlet Witch. But the problem is, the Scarlet Witch now has Wonder Man. And we're kind of left to believe that that is her true love because, as y'all know, when it comes to the Vision, his whole entire mind is kind of built off the idea of Wonder Man. So technically, if she did love Vision, it was still her loving Wonder Man. That's me personally. But either way, this is the end of this storyline. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.